My guest today is Stacey Mulcahy. Stacey, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
Really good. It's good to see you again. After those years we worked together, then we went our separate ways for a while.
Yeah.
What are you doing
Together,
now?
together, apart, together, apart.
What are you doing these days?
I'm right now. I focus a little bit. Well, I focus a lot, I guess, on like everyone else, AI. And when it dropped 2 years ago, I just went and tried to upskill myself on everything from non-engineering to engineering about it. And a lot of my charter right now at work is related to bridging some of those gaps in my colleagues and in employees where I can, where it makes sense. So I focus a lot on skilling AI adoption, and innovation because I sit in the garage, so we're all about innovation.
Oh, what is the garage?
Garage is an organization. We sit under technology and research. We're a small team, and we're focused on, I would say, grassroots innovation for the company, kind of starting with employees, letting them explore, enable these opportunities for them to go and try new things without fear of failing, because we work in a big corporation and you could push something out if you're working on a product that could affect millions. So we try to kind of encourage that kind of growth mindset and innovation and entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial spirit here at Microsoft. And we do that a variety of ways. Some of that's programming, some of that's offerings that we have, some of that's we run the global hackathon that happens every year for the company that over 70,000 people engage with every single year.
So you're providing low risk opportunities for people to learn new skills and to build cool things.
Yeah, build cool things, and some of those things that they build, they're very impactful. They land in products, they or become products, or they have real definite business value as a result of people putting themselves out there and exploring things that they want to explore.
Cool. And you mentioned AI, and you also mentioned that a couple of years ago when you were tasked with becoming sort of an expert. I'll put finger quotes around the word expert, but to become better at AI. Then now suddenly you're scrambling to learn as much as you can.
Yeah.
And so now you're, most people I think are in the same boat. People that have heard about this, I'll call it hype around AI. They know it's important. They know it's going to be important to their job. And they're struggling to find out how. And I think you're trying to facilitate that. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, everyone's in the same boat. It's moving. I would say that it's a technology that I don't want to say unprecedented, but I would say the pace at which it's moving and changing and evolving um, makes it even more challenging
Yeah.
for people to keep up. Yeah.
Let's talk about some of those challenges.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you look at the AI landscape, specifically, even if you look at models being, created and open source and shared and all those things are happening just at a real fast pace. There's huge updates, whether it's in research or whether it's in tools and platforms that people can use every single week. Like there's never a week where there's not something interesting or significant. Um, and so I would say, keeping up with what's happening and how things are evolving or changing is one of the biggest problems for people. Never mind the fact, I'm sure you know this one, David, is like, how do you dedicate the time? How do you keep on top of these things without it becoming your full-time job, right? And how do you keep on top of these things in a way that's really relevant to what you need, whether it's in your role or in your life or any of those things. And so that relevancy and then the pace at which things are changing, I would say, are kind of those challenges that people are facing when it comes to the space and developing skills, because by the time you develop a skill, it might have evolved or might have changed a little bit, or the tooling might have changed. And so, non-deterministic systems such as Gen AI require you to have a very different mindset. And I think that that's also a challenge for people because we're used to looking it up in the docs and the docs tell us what to do. And now you're in a mindset where you have to be the human in the loop and you have to work with these systems and you have to think critically, and you have to navigate it in a different way. So I think those are all challenges that people are facing or struggling with.
Sure, yeah. So, yeah, first of all, finding the time. Most of us have a day job that takes all of our time. And then prioritizing, because AI is big. There's a lot of topics involved in that. What do I learn first? And finding out what's most relevant to what you're doing.
Yeah,
What's so those are the those are the challenges.
some of them.
What's the solution? How can we, as either technical people or lay people, just get started?
Yeah, I think the key thing is, first it's your mindset. Number one, you got to be curious. If you're not curious, part of the problem with these tools is that, when they come out and they're in their infancy, these tools, platforms, this is true of all tech. This is not AI or Gen AI related. This is true of all these things. That when you go to use something in its infancy and it doesn't give you the immediate results you want, it doesn't give you that immediate aha moment, or it doesn't feel like it did the job for you, whatever that is, you're less likely to go back to it, right? And revisit it. And you know this of any app, any tool, any platform you've used where someone
Yeah.
recommends it and you go, yeah, really not for me, or didn't do what I expected. But the problem here, or the challenge here, is these tools are evolving and changing and new features are being added at a pace that is very, very fast. So, number one is always, I would always tell people, be curious and willing to explore. And yeah, that does mean that carving out a little bit of your time, even if that's like 15 minutes every morning to go
Right.
and try something new. And then the other one I would say, as people start to skill up in this space and think about it, is like always focus on what's immediate and relevant and what's a problem you want to solve for you now. Not in the future, but what's like a productivity gain you could get, or what's something you do again and again, and how can you use AI to help you there? And then you'll start to build the skills there because it's more relevant to what you need. Um, there's so much content out there in this space. There's so many tutorials, so many exercises, so many new things. It's really hard to wade through what is going to be good for you. And so understanding that, A, being curious, pushing the tools, pushing the platforms, um, I always say dog fooding them, like just use them for everything and then see what resonates with you. But then
Mhm.
also finding that role relevancy for you. So that one task you do again and again, like starting with productivity is a very natural one. Um, to free you up to do other things, before you work into more collaborative space maybe with it. But those are the ways that we usually tell people to start is, how can you get a productivity bump right away? What's one thing you do again and again? And how can AI offload some of those things?
I like that. Yeah, find something that is relevant to you. I would add even maybe create something that's relevant to you. You
Yep.
mentioned the global hackathon, and that's a chance for you to just pick a project that interests you and just focus on that. I think back to when .NET first came out. What was that? 25 years ago. One of the first things I did, I was struggling to learn it. So what I did is I created a website dedicated to my favorite sports team, and I
Yeah.
just started updating that. And every day I would just add a little bit more to that. And that was my little project because I really liked sports and, as a fan. And then I was using that interest to drive my knowledge of ASP.NET and of C Sharp, things like that.
Yeah, I think you raise a great point, and it's the intersectionality of, I'm learning a tech and I'm very interested in something. And especially with AI being across the board, it's not like a little vertical here. It's not like cryptocurrency, sitting over here. It's across the board. It can be in every vertical, every industry. I think you paint it right. Is find something that you can create, work on, build, invest in that really matters to you. It could be a personal interest. It could be a hobby. It could be you're trying to just figure something out for work. It could be whatever. But the moment you have that, then you're more motivated, right? Like you're like, oh, cool. I'm combining a passion with some tech, and I'm learning as I go along. And yeah, we always tell people when you're picking up new skills or whatever, like you've got to put them into practice. Reading a tutorial for a scenario that's nowhere near your own isn't going to make it relevant to you. So, you raised a great idea, great point there.
Do you think that these things that you talked about, being curious, carving out time, scoping to a problem that you want to solve that can increase productivity, Are they? Is the same advice apply whether or not you're a technologist? You and I are technologists versus whether you're a
Yeah.
layperson. I mean, can my grandfather benefit from that
A
same
hun-
advice, or is it
Yeah,
different?
100%. I mean,
Okay,
I honestly think 100% it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you're approaching it. It's whether or not you're open to it. It's whether or not you're understanding what it can do for you and not do for you, right? And why. Like those are all key skills and foundational skills. It doesn't matter if it's your neighbor, it doesn't matter if it's a teacher, it doesn't matter if you're a software engineer. Like those are just key things because, all the time you want to put a tool in our tool belt and have a golden hammer. We use it for everything, right? And so like understanding what tools to use when, no matter what role, what job, what thing you are, like when do I use email versus when do I text someone, right? Those are just foundational things that you develop over time. And so I would say that that applies to anyone across the board. Just go get curious about it and see what it can do for you in your scenario in your life. Yeah.
good advice. And speaking of non-technical, I think there are some non-technical aspects of AI that affect both technologists and lay people. Can you
Oh,
talk about that a little bit?
yeah. I
Maybe
mean,
like responsible AI, for example.
yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot of factors that come into play when it comes to AI and how fast it's moving forward, right? So we're going to have policy and regulation, and that comes down, from governments. That's going to change across the board, and so policy and regulation, especially as we move things forward, is going to evolve and it's going to change. And you started to see that there's many acts that have been, set up. Europe leading the way often there as we go through. So there's that. There's also responsible AI, which is like again the things and the way we should be thinking about how we build these systems so that we're inclusive, so that we're accountable, and trying to mitigate risk, right? Like where AI could go and how it could evolve to. Because I think that's a concern for a lot of people is misuse. Is the way I'll put it, right? We've seen deep fakes, we've seen all of those kind of things. So, with all of those challenges come technical solutions sometimes, comes frameworks, come all those things. So, those are some kind of across the board considerations. Doesn't matter if you're technical or non-technical. Um, as you go through. And so just, thinking critically about that, thinking critically about these systems when you use them, you prompted something, you got something back. That was a little questionable. Should it really do that?
Yeah.
Those kind of things as we go along. And then of course there's always going to be security. Security again is another one that works across the board. And what does it mean as we get into the age of agents where, when people talk about agents, one of the key things about them is the ability to, think, reason, and act on your behalf. And so, what does it mean to act on your behalf? We already have applications that do this, like they delegate permissions, you log in, they're doing things. But what does it mean for a system to take it a step further and do that? And what's the security involved with that? And how does that look? And so you're starting to see these kind of radius items that are really important here in this space and driving it forward so that we have AI systems that are inclusive and accountable and equitable for people as we go along.
Yeah. I think there's a tendency among some folks to think that AI is going to take over in the sense that it's going to eliminate a need for me. It's going to take away my job. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, run. No, just kidding. Listen, like I I think there's this promise of where AI is going to be, and some of this is fueled by all the movies we've seen, by all, Minority Report and all these things. And it's like, could that be the future? Absolutely. Right. Could there be some of those things? And are we there yet in pieces? Yeah, we for sure are in some of these areas of, robotics and embodied AI and all these things coming up. However, if you use these systems long enough, even if you're just using something like Copilot or ChatGPT and you're just having conversations and you're making travel plans or you soon start to understand a little bit of their limitations,
Right.
right? And their capabilities. And so, when people say, hey, it's best for you to think about it as offloading some stuff from you, yes, I think that's a great way to think about it. Give me the productivity gains. And when you think about productivity gains, those are typically things that happen again and again. They're predictable. They have a format. They have a thing like I got to do a weekly report. I got, those kind of things. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like who wants to be doing that kind of work when you could be digging into the data a little further and collaborating with AI to figure out insights and strategies and approaches. So the people that I see that kind of embrace this and say, you know what, it's not going to take over my job, it's going to evolve my job,
Right.
are the ones that are truly collaborating with these systems. And they're the creative director. They're the director of it. They're navigating it with their co-pilot, so to speak. But they're the ones who are driving the strategy. They're the ones bringing in the critical thinking. Because all these systems, again, you have to be the human in the loop. You have to validate. You have to check. And half the time, like it may not, you have to tweak. You're constantly, if you've ever been in a multi-turn conversation trying to do a strategy approach or something here, you'll know that you're constantly going back and forth, which is no different, David, than you and I sitting down and brainstorming on something, and we're going back and forth and back and forth. And it's the same thing. You're doing it with a system that is trained on a bunch of data that can
Yeah.
kind of help predict some of the output there.
I love your phrase, evolving your job, because there's been a lot of disruptive technology that changes the way that we work, but it's really, really rare that it changes things overnight. It
Yeah.
generally, we need to keep an eye on it and say, I need to change the way I work based on this technology. I need to learn how to make it me more productive. And I also like the point you bring up that offload to AI the things that are repetitive, which tend to be the boring stuff, right?
Yeah.
Leave me to do the creative things. Let me do the things that add real value that only a human can do for now.
Yeah, and that's the thing you have to remember is a lot of these systems are trained on this data over here, but David, you have this whole data set over here.
Mm.
You have all your years of experience, understanding, knowing where things are, whatever it may be. And so together, those things are really powerful,
Right.
right? But like it's not cloning you right now. So in the same sense, you can together work with those systems and bring the best of you and your knowledge base and your knowledge set. And again, how you think about things because you're directing that and it can help offload some of those things. Like I talked to my brother who's a teacher and I was like, why? Like, if you have to constantly redo these things, like a lesson plan, like, why don't you make a format that's your lesson plan and then iterate over here? And then that way you spend less time. And so you can spend more time thinking about how to grow some of your students or how to, and I think that was eye opening when you phrase it that way of like, you could actually
Right.
spend more time doing what you want to do than versus what you got to do. Right.
That's the way I look at it. There's always something more to do. I've never, in my entire career, I don't remember ever a time when I just ran out of stuff to do.
I want that job. Whoever has that job, hire me.
In a few years, I'll have that job where I
Yeah,
just wake up in the morning and try to figure out what to do.
retirement. Retirement.
Retirement is exactly what I'm talking
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
about. This might be what we've talked about in the last few minutes might be sort of an indication that people tend to over rely
Yeah.
on AI. They expect too much of it. They expect it to do more than it really is capable of.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two things. I think there's over reliance and then the unmet expectations of where we're at. And so over reliance is one thing. Over reliance is, you not bringing any critical thinking. Over reliance is I got 20 minutes to write a paper. I have it
Yeah,
write a paper. I don't check it. Like
do my homework for me.
yeah, over reliant. And again, as we use more of these systems, there is a huge, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong because I don't know, what the research shows here, but you can imagine that the more you use these systems, like, maybe your writing skills will go down a little bit, right? Like, so there's these skills that we have valued over time, whether it's comprehension, writing, any of those things. A lot of people will file them under soft skills, which I don't agree with, communication stuff. And how will that be impacted as a result? And that kind of files under over reliance. And so how are you making sure that you're still keeping these skills sharp because they're always going to be important. In fact, communication is your number one. Like if you're a good communicator, you're probably a good prompter. And so, communication skills are one of those. And then on the other hand, there's over reliance and then there's unmatched expectations. And there's this, hey, I saw that it can do all these things. Why doesn't it do all these things? And the landscape that we're at right now is that with these systems and you want it to do all these things for you, is it probably needs to work across many things to achieve a task, a long task, for example. Like you might do a newsletter. And so now you need to aggregate all the news. You need to go write it. You need to put it into a system. It needs to go email. You're probably working across 3 or 4 systems there. And that interoperability across the systems is the challenge that the industry is now starting to take on and work on. We're seeing that with MCP, for example, those protocols and those standards. But there's this expectation it should just go do this. And yeah, there might be a platform over here that does it, or it might be a platform over here. And it might use some legacy architecture or legacy approaches that we think about. I'm going to call them legacy. They still apply. But, that idea you're using connectors or connecting in or
Sure.
whatnot.
Or you
But
might have to
yeah,
actually write code.
well, yeah. And so, yeah, and that's the thing is there's this expectation that I should be able to use this agent. It's going to do all these things. And it's like, actually, no, if you wanted to do all those things, you probably got to get under the hood. And to your point, you probably have to write a little bit of code because all of the tools and the interoperability across platforms, it's coming, but it's not there yet. And so there's these expectations that are, and you see it when you talk to a lot of people that are just like, they've been hesitant to embrace it almost because they feel like it should be able to do all these things, but why doesn't it do all these things? And you're like, that's part of exploration and curiosity is trying to understand the capabilities and also the limitations so that you can make the choice for you of how you go do something, approach something, or use something.
Stacey, this is really interesting stuff you're telling me. Is there anything that you feel like our viewers really need to know that we haven't talked about yet?
Um, that's a hard question. Uh, you know, I think people, I think a lot of people are just, where do I get started or how do I build the skills here? And I think the number one thing that I can tell people is that if you're not using it, you're not going to build any skills at any point in time. And that the best piece of advice I give to someone is just just use it painfully on any of these systems, platforms, anything that you want. Just go and eat the dog food and try to use them for every scenario where you might ask a question or you don't know how to do something or whatever. Just use the systems. Like take a screenshot. What is this? Ask it. If you're a gardener, go look at all your garden plans and get it to evaluate your garden plans. Like figure if you're going on vacation, oh my God, do you know how awesome these things are on vacation when you don't know
Ooh,
what you're
I'm
looking
actually
at?
going on vacation Friday.
There you go. Like
Good call.
snapshot where you're at. Tell me things around me that I should go see that I don't know about. Like tell me the hidden gems or whatever. Like it's beautiful in those scenarios. And so, but the problem is that if you don't put them to the paces, right? Like just like someone can tell me this is painful in this application. If you can't tell me what's painful in it, you're not using it enough. So go just use it, go use it and just commit to a week of like nonstop and then figure out after that if it's for you or if it's not.
That is awesome. Stacey, thank you so much for your time. I have learned a lot the last 25 minutes.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been fun. Technology is way more fun with your friends, and talking about technology is way more fun with your technical friends.